Large code bases with hundreds of thousands or millions lines of codes are hard to maintain. There is much knowledge about how to maintain small code bases, the solid principle, design patterns, but when you come to large-scale systems, all these break because, for sure, it cannot be assumed that all these good patterns were used. So here are a few tips to handling such large code bases as the one who maintains them, as the one who enters and starts maintaining them. I like to think of it as a puzzle that you need to solve and not to break, because it's possible to drop this puzzle from the table and to break it all. So we want to minimize our actions. Basically, it's a puzzle and we are detectives, and we need to find what we need to change, how to change it, and how to make sure that we reduce the blast radius to the minimum. So the way we handle this puzzle is check all the resources that we have, all the clues, just like detectives, to understand how the code works. Of course, if there are already some people who handled this project in the past, then it would be good to consult with them. The big issues comes when they are not, the people are not there in the company, because people tend to switch companies every few years. So it's most likely that such large code bases, we would not be able to find the original authors. And you wouldn't want to ping them in LinkedIn about this huge white elephant that they created in the past. So the first hint in order to decipher what's going on in this large code base is the documentation. Find basically any documentation that you can, be it even if it's not up to date. For sure it won't be up to date, for sure it would contain mistakes, but reading some documentation is better than none. So I would start simply by scanning and reading every piece of documentation there is. This takes time, but what can we do? We need to handle this code base and it's going to take time. So I start by reading all the documentations that I can find. Then I go and scan the code base, find the main modules, and the specific note I look for tests, because tests are not just pieces of code. The test, if there are the tests, then these are the things that tells us how the authors of this code consider this code base. Meaning, in the test, you would see when this happens, then this should happen. And these are great clues, just like documentation of what this code is supposed to get. So we read the documentation, then we are going through the main modules, then we are going through the test. And we are looking at the test as additional hints that would tell us what we need to do. The next detective work that we can do is to look at the commit log history of the projects. In the commit log history, we can find changes to the code. We can find how many people manipulated the code, and we can find interesting commit log messages that can serve as additional hints. This is additional detective work that we can do by reading the commit log messages, by seeing some changes, by looking at how the code started and main points of evolutions of the code. Another hint that we can see for us to help us is when we do a change, then we want to reduce the blast radius as possible, because once we get into the code and we have some idea of how to change it, first we want to check if we can put any tests. Not always it's possible. If we can, then great. If not, then not. And then we want to see and to limit the amount of places that we change to a minimum in these large code bases. We are not going to do a large refactor now. We are going to pinpoint something and change this specifically and heavily check that it's working. Leave the refactoring for another task. It's not the role of this task. And so with that, we can also come to create some model of the system, of the main components, and it's basically, guys, just a detective work. We look at the documentation, we look at the commit messages, we look at the code itself, at the models, we look at the tests. But the main point is that it's a detective work, and we have ways to understand what's going on. We said we have the commit messages, some old documentation, some comments in the code, how many people are updating it, seeing the changes in code. It's a detective work. So this was how to maintain huge code bases by original people who wrote it, who do not currently maintain it.